Good morning, Your Honor. Rob Mason, Office of the Public Defender.
Deborah Ballard, Office of the Public Defender. Good morning, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm in receipt of a 2-count indictment for case number 2011-6222. At this time, I would stand to the indictment.
Pleaded not guilty as to Mr. Fernandez's case.
A 12-year-old boy stands in court accepting a plea deal that will shape the rest of his life. His name is Christian Fernandez, and in 2011, he became the youngest person in Jacksonville's history to be charged as an adult with first-degree murder. The victim was his 2-year-old half-brother, David. But this isn't a simple story of a child murderer. It's the story of a boy born to a 12-year-old rape victim. A boy who was himself a victim of horrific abuse from the moment he entered the world. It's about a mother who waited 8 hours to get help for her dying son. It's about a system that couldn't decide whether to treat Christian as a dangerous criminal or a traumatized child in need of help. The case sparked national outrage, with nearly 200,000 people signing petitions demanding he be tried as a juvenile. Prosecutors argued for adult charges, and caught in the middle was a 12-year-old who had never known a single day of safety in his entire life. This is the story of what happened on March 14, 2011, the interrogation that followed, and the question that haunted everyone involved. At what point does a child become accountable for crimes committed in a childhood defined by violence? To understand what happened to David Galarraga, you first have to understand the life Christian Fernandez was born into, because from the very beginning, there was no chance. Christian was born on January 14, 1999 in Miami, Florida. His mother, Bianela Susana, was 12 years old at the time. She hadn't chosen to become a mother. She had been sexually assaulted by a 25-year-old man who was later convicted of sexual battery and sent to prison. Bianela was a child herself, trying to raise a child while dealing with her own trauma and poverty. By the time Christian was 2 years old, he was found wandering naked and dirty in a South Florida parking lot. Child Services temporarily removed him from his mother's custody, but he was eventually returned to her care. The pattern of neglect and instability continued. Bianela struggled with relationships, with money, with providing basic care for her children. When Christian was around 7 years old, Bianela began a relationship with a man who became Christian's stepfather. That's when the physical abuse began. For years, Christian's stepfather beat him. The violence was severe enough that it left lasting trauma. And then, in 2010, something happened that would traumatize Christian even further. His stepfather learned of an impending arrest for the beatings, and he committed suicide in front of the family. Imagine being a young child watching the person who has brutalized you for years take his own life right in front of you. The psychological damage would be immeasurable. But for Christian, there was no real intervention, no sustained therapy, no safety net. By 2011, the family had moved to Jacksonville. Bianela was now living with 4 children. Christian, then 12, David, a 2-year-old, and 2 other siblings aged 5 and 4. Despite the chaos at home, Christian was described as a straight-A 6th grader at Kernan Middle School, showing academic promise. But beneath that surface achievement, there were deeply troubling signs. Psychological evaluations would later reveal that Christian had killed a kitten by slamming its head on the floor after it scratched him. There were reports of inappropriate sexual behavior. He was, by expert assessment, at high risk for future violence. The first serious incident involving David occurred in January 2011, just 2 months before the fatal attack. Christian broke David's leg during what he claimed was wrestling, though it was initially described as a playground accident.
You were home. Well, you told me, you said before, in January, he got hurt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had broken his leg, little David.
Mm-hmm.
And how did he break his leg in January?
By yoga.
Yoga?
Mm-hmm.
During the interrogation, Christian would describe the incident as yoga, claiming he put David's legs in an unnatural position.
Y'all were in your room doing yoga?
Mm-hmm.
Were y'all watching a video or something, or?
No.
So what exactly happened that day in January?
That I put his legs to in back of his butt.
Okay, like how? Can you show me? I mean, you probably can't. Flexible, but how did you do his legs?
Like the Indians do.
Like the Indians do? So, did you put, the leg behind his neck, or how did you do it?
Like in the floor behind him.
Oh, so kind of like a reverse Indian style?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the truth, the injury was severe enough to fracture a toddler's leg, and Bianela delayed medical care for 2 days and lied to authorities to avoid Department of Children and Families involvement. It was a warning sign that went unheeded. 2 months later, David would be dead. March 14, 2011 was a Monday. Bianella Susana left Cristian to babysit his younger siblings while she drove another child to school and ran errands. It was Super Bowl season, and she had things to do. She left a 12-year-old in charge of a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
I asked you about little David. Is David or David? David, okay. And David is your little brother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you told me that you live with your mom
Mm-hmm.
and your 2 little brothers and your little sister, right?
Mm-hmm.
And David is the baby.
Mm-hmm.
He's 2, right? Do you know what it is?
No.
Okay. So you don't know when he turned 2?
I think he's 3.
What happened next is based on Christian's own confession during interrogation. According to his account, he became angry, reportedly over issues related to his late stepfather, and repeatedly pushed 2-year-old David into a bookshelf, slamming his head against it.
This wasn't an accident. Christian did it. How did he do it? He got mad and he took him by the head and smacked twice into the bookshelf. He cried.
Yeah,
First time. And then you pushed him again.
I gotta stop crying.
And he said the first time he hit it, he was crying, and the second time he did it, out and unconscious.
David suffered a fractured skull, brain bleeding, and bruising to his eye and nose. The impact was severe enough to knock him unconscious immediately. Cristian, realizing what he had done, must have panicked. But he didn't call for help. He didn't try to wake David up. He just waited. When Bianella returned home later that day, she found David unconscious. And then she made a decision that would change everything. She waited nearly 8 hours before seeking medical help. Bianella's search records show that finally, at 3:07 p.m., hours after the head injury, she looked up the hospital where she would later bring David. During those 8 hours, Bianella applied ice to David's head. She researched concussion symptoms online. Her search history would later show queries for concussions, unconsciousness, and hospital information. She downloaded music. She even visited a bank, though police could find no record of any transaction. She left the children alone again during this time, all while her 2-year-old son lay unconscious with a fractured skull and bleeding brain. Finally, at 5:30 p.m., she brought David to the hospital. But by then, it was too late. The damage was catastrophic. Medical experts would later testify that if Bianella had sought immediate medical attention, David might have survived. On March 16, 2011, 2 days after his injuries, doctors made the difficult decision to remove David from life support. His injuries were too severe for recovery. An autopsy ruled his death a homicide caused by blunt force trauma to the head. Cristian was arrested immediately after questioning. Bianella was arrested 2 weeks later. The interrogation of 12-year-old Christian Fernandez is one of the most controversial pieces of evidence in this case, and ultimately, it was ruled inadmissible. The day after David's injuries, March 15, 2011, detectives brought Cristian in for questioning. The interrogation lasted for 1 hour and 24 minutes. No parent or attorney was present. Cristian was alone with adult detectives who were investigating the death of a toddler.
Oh, you're 13 now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So you're 13 years old.
I'm 12. And
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, 12. Okay, all right. So I want to explain these to you to where you can understand them, okay? I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to explain it to you what it means, and then you can let me know if you understand them or not, okay?
The detective read Cristian his Miranda rights, attempting to explain them in language a child could understand.
The first one says you do not have to make a statement or say anything. Do you understand what that means, Christian?
oh yeah, no.
Okay. This means you don't have to talk to me when I talk to you, and you don't have to tell me anything, and you don't have to say anything, but you can say something. It just tells you that you don't have to. Do you understand what that means? So I'll read it again. You do not have to make a statement or say anything. So that means you don't have to talk to me, but I want you to talk to me, but you don't have to talk to me. Okay? Okay. So you understand what that means? Okay. The next one says anything you say can be used against you in court. Do you know what that means? Okay, that means if anything that you tell me today, it can come back up later in court. Okay?
But there's a problem with this explanation. The detective is clearly trying to make the rights understandable to a 12-year-old, but in doing so, she's also making them less clear. You don't have to talk to me, but I want you to talk to me is confusing. It sends mixed signals to a child who is already in a vulnerable, scared position.
The next one says, you have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before you make a statement or before any questions are asked of you. and to have the lawyer with you during any questioning. Which that means is you can have a lawyer with you while I talk to you, but you don't have to. It says that you have that right, that you can have one. Do you understand what that means?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next one says, if you can afford to hire a lawyer, be appointed for you for any questioning if you wish. That means if you don't have money for a lawyer, which I know you're 12, so that would be your responsibility to get a lawyer for you. If you don't have the money for one, that we will give you one. You understand what that means? Mm-hmm. Okay. The last one says, if you do answer questions, you have the right to stop answering questions at any time and consult the lawyer. That means while you're talking to me, you can stop at any time, okay, and ask for a lawyer.
During the interrogation, Cristian initially claimed that David fell from a bunk bed or was hit by falling books.
And what happened tonight? Because I know originally you said that he fell off the bunk bed, but that wasn't true, correct? Okay, so that was a lie? Okay, so tell me what really happened tonight.
I put him to carry books.
You put him to carry books? Okay, what kind of books?
Like the books that we have on our bookshelves.
Like big books or little books? Or...
Like a bunch of skinny books.
Okay, so he was carrying them? Does he walk good with that one cast on?
I take pictures with one and normal works with the other.
Okay, so he had books in his arms? And then what happened?
And then they fell on him.
They fell on him as he was carrying?
As he was carrying them.
Where they fall on him at?
On his head and,
How did they fall on his head if he was carrying them?
like this he was carrying them. Because he doesn't know how to carry away.
So then what else happened?
And then they fell on him and then he fell.
That's not the truth, Cristian, is it? It's okay. I just need to know the truth. So, just like you told me the truth about January, and you're doing a good job. I know it's hard to tell the truth because I know you said earlier it's hard to tell the truth. But the truth is the right thing, right? Yeah? And that's what we need to do, huh? So just tell me a little bit more about what happened tonight, and then we'll be done.
But eventually, under continued questioning, he confessed to pushing David into the bookshelf.
And how did you push him in? Like, what was he doing for you to push him?
Nothing.
Why'd you push him? Are you angry about something?
Yes.
What were you angry about?
No, my stepdad did it to me.
Oh, your stepdad did to you? Is that what you said? Why were you angry about that tonight?
Because I was thinking about it.
Why'd you take it out on your little brother? Is this because he was there?
Yes.
How many times did you push him into the shelf?
Twice.
But there were troubling signs throughout the interrogation that Cristian didn't fully comprehend what was happening.
His brain started swelling.
Like bigger or smaller?
Bigger.
So it touches his brain?
Yes. I guess when his head hit the shelf, it caused some swelling, I think. Did you know what you did was wrong? How did you,
I felt bad because then I realized what I actually done. Because I wasn't really thinking about what I was doing when I pushed him. I was just thinking about my stepdad.
Okay. And then when you realized what you'd done and you said you felt bad, what did you feel bad about?
About what I did and what was going to happen later.
To him or to you?
To him. I wasn't worried about me.
In August 2012, Judge Mallory Cooper ruled that the confession was inadmissible. The judge determined that Cristian, as a 12-year-old, did not fully understand his Miranda rights or the implications of waiving them without an adult present. The entire interrogation, including his confession, was suppressed as evidence. This ruling would prove crucial in preventing Cristian from facing a potential life sentence. In June 2011, a grand jury indicted Cristian on first-degree murder charges. He became the youngest person in Jacksonville's history to face such charges as an adult. He was held in Duval County Jail with other juveniles, facing the possibility of life in prison without parole. The decision to charge him as an adult was made by State Attorney Angela Corey, a prosecutor who would later gain national notoriety for her handling of other controversial cases. Corey argued that the crime involved reflection and intent, justifying adult charges despite Cristian's age. She pointed to the fact that he had hurt David before, that he had time to think between the two pushes, and that he tried to cover up what happened. In Florida at the time, there was no minimum statutory age for filing charges against a child for a capital offense, meaning crimes punishable by death or life in prison. This legal framework meant that theoretically, a child of any age could be charged as an adult if the crime was severe enough. Cristian at 12 fell into this category. Corey faced immediate backlash. Critics argued that charging a 12-year-old as an adult was cruel and counterproductive, that it ignored everything we know about child development and trauma. But Corey maintained that she was seeking justice for David, pointing out that the toddler had no voice, no chance to grow up, no opportunity for redemption. The prosecution built their case on several key arguments. They emphasized that this wasn't an accident. Cristian had pushed David twice, not once. The first push made David cry. Cristian could have stopped there. He could have called for help. Instead, he pushed again, harder, rendering the toddler unconscious. That second push, prosecutors argued, showed deliberation and intent. They also pointed to the January incident where Cristian had broken David's leg. This established a pattern of violence toward the toddler, suggesting that the March attack wasn't an isolated event but part of an escalating series of abusive behaviors. Furthermore, prosecutors noted Cristian's attempts to cover up what happened. He initially lied to investigators, claiming David fell from a bunk bed or was hit by falling books. Only after sustained questioning did he admit to pushing David. This attempt at deception, they argued, showed consciousness of guilt. But Cristian's defense attorneys painted a very different picture. They highlighted his abusive upbringing. Born to a 12-year-old rape victim, found wandering naked as a toddler, beaten for years by his stepfather, witness to that stepfather's suicide. They argued that Cristian was not a calculating killer, but a deeply traumatized child who had never been given the help he desperately needed.
Don't forget, you're indicting a 12-year-old child for first-degree murder when you, the state, know he didn't intentionally kill his brother. You know that going into it. So what are you thinking?
Defense attorneys brought in expert testimony about the effects of childhood trauma on brain development. They explained how chronic abuse and neglect can literally alter the structure of a developing brain, affecting impulse control, emotional regulation, and decision-making abilities. Cristian, they argued, had been conditioned by violence. He had learned from his stepfather that when you're angry, you hurt someone. When someone makes you upset, you use physical force. This wasn't an excuse, his lawyers stressed. It was an explanation, and more importantly, it was a reason why the criminal justice system needed to treat him as a juvenile rather than an adult. Children's brains are still developing. They have a greater capacity for change, for learning new patterns of behavior. With proper intervention, therapy, education, support, a 12-year-old who commits a violent act can be rehabilitated in ways an adult cannot. The defense also challenged the prosecution's characterization of Cristian's behavior as calculated and deliberate. They pointed out that a 12-year-old who had been through what Cristian had been through might not have the same capacity for understanding consequences as a typical child his age. His cognitive development may have been delayed by neglect and trauma. His ability to fully comprehend what he was doing and what the results would be was questionable at best. The case became a national flashpoint. A Change.org petition calling for Cristian to be tried in juvenile court collected over 194,000 signatures. Letters poured in to the judge from people around the world arguing that charging a 12-year-old as an adult was unconscionable. Civil rights organizations weighed in. Advocacy groups focused on juvenile justice reform rallied to Cristian's cause. They argued that the case represented everything wrong with America's criminal justice system: the criminalization of traumatized children, the failure to provide adequate social services, the tendency to punish rather than rehabilitate. Supporters of Cristian organized vigils and awareness campaigns. They pointed out the systemic failures that had led to this tragedy. Child Protective Services had been involved with the family multiple times but hadn't removed Cristian from his abusive home. Schools knew about his behavioral issues but hadn't connected him with mental health services. The warning signs had been there, but no one had intervened in a meaningful way. On the other side, there were those who believed Cristian deserved adult punishment. They argued that regardless of his background, he had killed a defenseless toddler. David Galarraga's short life deserved justice. Lenience toward Cristian, they felt, would be a betrayal of the victim. Some commenters pointed out that plenty of children grow up in abusive, neglectful homes and don't kill their siblings. They argued that trauma might explain Cristian's actions but shouldn't excuse them. A life had been taken, and someone needed to be held fully accountable. There was also the matter of Cristian's mother. Bianella Susana was charged with aggravated manslaughter for her role in David's death. She had waited 8 hours to seek medical help, effectively sealing her son's fate. In March 2012, she pleaded guilty, facing 13 to 30 years in prison. Additionally, Cristian was accused of sexually abusing his 5-year-old half-brother between October 2010 and March 2011. This led to an additional adult indictment in January 2012. However, this charge was dropped in November 2012 due to lack of physical evidence, conflicting statements, and the suppression of Cristian's police statements. As the trial date approached, the legal landscape shifted. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Miller v. Alabama that mandatory life sentences without parole for juveniles were unconstitutional. This decision added pressure to find an alternative to trying Cristian as an adult for first-degree murder. On February 7, 2013, at age 13, Christian Fernandez accepted a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter for David's death and aggravated battery for the earlier broken leg incident. The deal was negotiated by private attorneys, including Hank Cox, and it avoided an adult trial that could have resulted in a life sentence. Under the plea agreement, Cristian was committed to the Department of Juvenile Justice until his 19th birthday, January 14, 2018. He would serve approximately 7 years total from the time of his arrest. The sentence came with conditions. Upon release, he would begin up to 8 years of probation. The conditions included maintaining employment or school enrollment, no unsupervised contact with minors under 16 without approval, staying away from his siblings unless they initiated contact, and continuing therapy and education. Cristian was released on January 15, 2018, one day after turning 19. He had been incarcerated at the Cypress Creek Juvenile Offender Correctional Center in Florida, where he had pursued education and trauma-focused therapy. Throughout his incarceration, advocates like Florida Children First noted his progress. He worked on his education, he participated in therapy. A supporter named Mary Cox became a consistent presence in his life, visiting him and emphasizing the importance of rehabilitation over punishment. Bianella Susana, meanwhile, received a lighter sentence than expected. She pleaded guilty to aggravated manslaughter and was sentenced to 10 years, but with credit for time served and most of the sentence suspended to probation. She was ordered to spend 90 days in a domestic violence shelter and 2 years in a halfway house. Her parental rights to all her children were terminated. In 2015, she spoke out about the case, emphasizing the importance of rehabilitation in the juvenile justice system and the failures that had led to her son's crime. So where is Christian Fernandez now? The answer is, we don't really know, and that's probably for the best. His probation was officially terminated in May 2023, 5 years after his release. To this day, there are no public records of new arrests or violations, no reports of reoffending, no major news stories. According to some social media accounts purported to be his, Cristian now works at a barbershop and is living a quiet life. But these accounts can't be fully verified, and detailed information about his current whereabouts and activities is, appropriately, not public. The fact that Cristian has managed to stay out of the news, to avoid further legal trouble, to apparently build something resembling a normal life, that's actually a success story. It suggests that the decision to treat him as a juvenile, to focus on rehabilitation rather than pure punishment, may have worked. The case led to changes in Duval County's juvenile prosecution practices, with officials favoring more rehabilitative approaches for young offenders. It became a touchstone in debates about juvenile justice reform, especially in the wake of Miller versus Alabama. Some people believe Cristian got off too easy, that 7 years wasn't enough for taking a life. They argue that he knew what he was doing, that pushing a toddler into a bookshelf twice shows intent, and that the justice system failed David by being too lenient with his killer. Others believe that charging a 12-year-old as an adult was barbaric, that Cristian was as much a victim as a perpetrator, and that the real villains in this story were the adults who failed to protect him and failed to protect David. The Christian Fernandez case is a tragedy layered upon tragedy. It's a story about cycles of abuse, about systemic failures, about a criminal justice system struggling to balance accountability with compassion. It's about the impossible question of how we should treat children who commit adult crimes in childhoods defined by adult violence. And perhaps most importantly, it's a reminder that monsters aren't born, they're created, and sometimes with intervention, rehabilitation, and a genuine commitment to helping rather than just punishing, they can be unmade. The case is closed. The sentences have been served, but the questions it raised about justice, childhood, trauma, and redemption remain as urgent and unanswerable as ever.